Walang ay manan.
We are currently monitoring a seismic shift in the tennis world coming straight out of Doha, a developing situation that has completely rewritten the script for this year's Qatar Open, where teenage sensation Alex Eala has pulled off the unimaginable, selling out every single available seat at the massive Khalifa International Stadium for what should have been a routine opening round contest. The disparity we are seeing on the ground is nothing short of mind-boggling. While decorated, Grand Slam champions were grinding it out on the courts before rows of vacant sun-bleached chairs. Tournament organizers took a massive gamble by positioning Eala as the day's headline act, deliberately prioritizing her star power over the established world number ones. A staggering army of 7,000 die-hard Filipino fans descended upon the complex, effectively turning a sleepy Tuesday afternoon qualifier into an atmosphere rivaling a World Cup final, leaving the highest-seeded players to labor in virtual silence, with only the polite ripples of Vio, scattered applause bouncing off the empty stands in the desert heat. This phenomenon forces us to confront a massive, uncomfortable question regarding the future of the sport. Does Alex Eala right now possess more legitimate commercial viability and raw magnetism than the reigning Grand Slam queens? Or is this just a fleeting mirage created by intense, nationalistic pride? We really need to know where you stand on this debate. So please do not hesitate to head down to the comments section and give us your unfiltered take on who is actually moving the needle and selling tickets in women's tennis at this very moment. Let us cut through the noise and look directly at the cold, hard data, because to simply call the scenes unfolding in Doha surprising would be a criminal understatement of the absolute mania we are witnessing on the ground. This is truly uncharted territory in the modern history of the WTA Tour. We are looking at Alex Eala, a rising star still ranked outside the top 100, walking out for a preliminary clash against the Czech Republic's Teresa Valentova and packing the arena to its absolute bursting point. Let's be crystal clear about the magnitude of this achievement. She didn't just draw a decent crowd. The venue was completely sold out, hitting maximum capacity long before the athletes even picked up their rackets for the pre-match warm-up. Insiders from the box office have confirmed that the ticket inventory didn't just sell. It evaporated within minutes of the schedule going online, and we actually saw the rare spectacle of ticket scalpers lurking outside the gates, trying to flip passes for a first-round tennis match at a premium. The frenzy on the ground escalated to such a fever pitch that the security teams were forced to drastically overhaul their standard protocols as the sheer density of the mob gathering near the players' tunnel became a legitimate safety headache for the event organizers. To put this madness into its proper historical context, remember that the Qatar Open has traditionally been the playground for the sport's royalty, hosting legends like Serena Williams, Maria Sharapova, Justine Henin, and Iga Swiatek for years. Historically, these early round daytime sessions are sedate, library, quiet affairs defined by acres of empty seats and a polite atmosphere, while the top seeds slowly try to find their groove in the tournament. That has been the standard operating procedure for WTA 1000 events for decades, and frankly, that is exactly what every expert predicted we would see this week in the year 2026. Usually, the organizers stack the blockbuster matchups in the primetime evening slots, hoping to catch the after-work crowd while resigning themselves to the fact that early rounds are basically loss leaders that generate zero buzz. However, Alex Eala has single-handedly taken a sledgehammer to that business model, forcing every promoter in the region to completely rethink what actually drives revenue and foot traffic in the Middle East. The tournament directors looked at their draw, saw a roster stacked with major trophy winners and top 10 elites, and made the conscious choice to designate a 20-year-old Filipino phenom as their primary commercial asset. Just take a second to appreciate the sheer audacity and the calculated risk involved in that administrative decision. By making that call, they effectively admitted to the entire world that Eala is currently a bigger box office attraction than the women who have actually lifted major silverware and held the world #1 ranking. And the footage proves their gamble was an absolute masterstroke. The stadium didn't just fill up, it metamorphosed into a home game with the Philippine flag waving frantically in every single section of the stands. The auditory experience was absolute sensory overload, with synchronized chants shaking the foundations of the complex, and decibel levels hitting peaks you would typically only associate with a high-stakes international football derby. For her opponent, Valentova, That wall of noise must have been suffocating, but for Eala, it was pure unadulterated fuel manufacturing a Davis Cup or Billie Jean King Cup level of intensity in the middle of a standard tour event. The root cause of this explosion is simple, yet it represents a demographic goldmine that tennis authorities have criminally overlooked until very recently. Qatar plays host to a massive, vibrant diaspora of Filipino expatriates, with hundreds of thousands of hardworking individuals living in the region who are absolutely starved for genuine representation. For years, this community has been waiting for a new sporting icon to rally behind on the global stage, searching for that same electric fervor they once poured into boxing legend Manny Pacquiao. Now, in 2026, that kinetic energy has transferred directly to Alex Eala, and they have effectively turned the Khalifa International Complex into an impregnable fortress of national pride. The moment the order of play dropped, the mobilization within the community was organic and instantaneous, with social media groups, fan clubs, and private group chats lighting up in total unison. It is absolutely crucial to understand that this turnout was not the result of some slick corporate marketing strategy or paid promotional campaigns by the tournament sponsors. This was a raw, grassroots movement, powered by a population desperate to elevate one of their own onto the international platform, and the difference in energy was palpable in the air. Now, we have to contrast those chaotic scenes with the reports coming in from the side courts, which confirm that matches featuring elite seeds in the exact same time slots drew perhaps 30 to 40% capacity on a good day. Even a superstar like Aryna Sabalenka, a multiple Grand Slam champion and former world #1, found herself competing in a cavernous stadium that was half empty and completely devoid of electricity. Similarly, the early matches featuring Iga Swiatek saw rows upon rows of available seating, painting a very stark and somewhat embarrassing picture of the current engagement levels for the tour's top brass. These are the athletes who on paper are supposed to be the marquee attractions at any tournament, yet they failed to generate even a fraction of the voltage that Eala created without breaking a sweat. That reality has to be a bitter pill to swallow if you are one of those top-tier players, knowing you have sacrificed everything to win majors and dominate the rankings. Yet here is a young contender from the Philippines who has yet to claim a major WTA title, selling out the venue while the world's best are playing to the sound of their own footsteps echoing off the concrete. Any jealousy brewing in the locker room right now is real and honestly completely justified, given what Eala has just proved to the entire sporting ecosystem. She has demonstrated that true star power in the modern era of tennis is not solely defined by ranking points or trophy cabinets. It is fundamentally about the ability to forge a visceral connection with an audience. It is about representing something far greater than just your own individual athletic achievement or personal statistical records. The thousands of Filipino fans screaming in the stands are not just cheering for a talented tennis player, they are actively supporting the very concept of representation and visibility. They are celebrating a rare moment of Filipino excellence, shining on a global platform that has historically been dominated by European and American athletes for decades. From a tactical perspective, the match itself was fascinating to watch, because Eala had to navigate the immense psychological weight of 7,000 people screaming her name after every single point won or lost. While that support is a massive weapon, it also brings crushing expectations. You walk out there hoping for a boost and instead get hit with a literal wall of pressure to perform. The natural instinct in that kind of heated environment is to overhit, to try and crush every ball to get that roar from the crowd. But tennis is a game that rewards patience and consistency over flashy heroics. Valentova is certainly no pushover. She is a formidable Czech talent, possessing a massive serve and heavy flat ground strokes that can dictate the flow of play if she is given time. Furthermore, she held the psychological edge coming into this, having beaten Eala previously with the head-to-head record, standing at 1-0 in favor of the Czech player before this showdown. Consequently, Eala wasn't just fighting the opponent standing across the net. She was battling to manage the overwhelming energy of the moment without letting the adrenaline derail her focus. She was facing a massive challenge not just against the physical powerhouse on the other side of the net, but against her own history. Alex Eala was locked in a brutal psychological warfare against the ghosts of previous losses and that irritating statistical curse involving her matches against Czech opponents. However, the version of Eala we are witnessing here in 2026 has clearly undergone a complete and radical mental transformation. If we were to rewind the clock just 2 years, that crushing burden of national expectation might have caused her to crumble under the lights. But today, she flipped the script entirely. Instead of buckling under the pressure, she absorbed that electric atmosphere, and channeled every volt of it directly into a masterclass performance. She had to dig incredibly deep into her defensive toolkit, unleashing that wicked trademark lefty forehand hook, a weapon sharpened to perfection at the Rafa Nadal Academy, to miraculously keep herself alive in rallies where she had absolutely no business staying in the point. The match turned into a grueling war of attrition. She kept extending the exchanges, practically daring Valentova to hit just one more winner until the Czech player finally disintegrated under the relentless pressure. Then came that pivotal moment in the second set, a sequence so spectacular it went viral and lit up social media timelines instantly. Eala was dragged frantically out wide to her backhand wing, practically shoved all the way into the doubles alley and looking completely compromised and out of position to make a play. But she sprinted, slid aggressively across the gritty hardcourt surface, and somehow managed to flick a passing shot straight down the line that kissed the corner with absolute geometric perfection. The resulting roar from the stands was so thunderous you would honestly think it registered on the local seismographs in Doha. And frankly, that is not hyperbole. The decibel level inside that stadium was genuinely deafening and shook the very foundations of the arena. You have to remember the courts here in Doha are medium-slow hard courts, with a very specific gritty texture that really accepts spin. These conditions are absolutely tailor-made for Eala's specific grinding style of play. Her heavy topspin forehand bites fiercely into the surface and kicks up violently high, creating a total nightmare scenario for taller, flatter hitters like Valentova, who struggle to find their strike zone against that kind of lively ball. Eala utilized that high-kicking bounce to pin Valentova way back behind the baseline, effectively neutralizing the Czech player's natural power advantage and dictating the geometry of the court at will. Following the match, Eala grabbed the microphone and addressed the massive crowd in her native Tagalog. The reaction was instantaneous and overwhelming. The entire venue absolutely erupted with unbridled joy and pride. She thanked them profusely for making a foreign land feel exactly like home, specifically acknowledging the sacrifices of the overseas workers who spent their hard-earned wages just to secure a ticket to see her play. That visceral connection, that deep emotional tether binding the athlete to the fan base, is exactly the magic ingredient that transforms a simple tennis match into a transcendent sporting event. It is that intangible quality that legends like Muhammad Ali possessed. It is the same aura Manny Pacquiao carried into the ring. And make no mistake, it is exactly what Alex Eala holds in the palm of her hands right now. Meanwhile, you have to imagine Aryna Sabalenka watching this scene unfold from her hotel room, wondering how on earth she has been reduced to a mere afterthought at a tournament where she is legitimately the heavy favorite to lift the trophy. We are talking about a woman who has hoisted multiple Grand Slam trophies and dominated the tour. She has held the world #1 ranking and decimated opponents. By all rights, she should be the marquee attraction here. Yet the organizers have poured all their promotional energy into a player who has technically never won a major WTA title. Now, to be clear, this is not a criticism of the organizers. Quite the contrary. They made the absolutely correct decision from a strictly business and engagement standpoint. The cold, hard truth is that Eala sells tickets and fills seats. Sabalenka, for all her immense talent and accolades, simply does not move the needle here in Qatar in the same way. The demographic reality on the ground is that the Filipino community mobilizes in massive numbers to support their own. Other expatriate communities simply do not turn out with that same level of ferocity, loyalty, or intensity. This entire situation exposes a fundamental flaw in how the WTA has traditionally marketed its biggest stars and structured its events. For years, the tour has relied on traditional metrics like world rankings and Grand Slam titles to dictate who gets the promotional spotlight. But those numbers fail to capture cultural resonance or actual demographic buying power. Alex Eala might sit significantly lower in the official rankings compared to a giant of the game like Sabalenka. However, right here in Qatar, she is infinitely more valuable from a commercial perspective. The economic implications of this disconnect are staggering for the sport. Tournament directors across the entire tour are likely looking at this data right now and realizing they have been scheduling matches incorrectly for years by ignoring local demographics. They have historically slotted the top seeds into prime time, operating under the outdated assumption that high rankings are the sole driver of attendance. But what if the player with the most rabid, passionate fan base should get those marquee slots, regardless of the number printed next to their name on the draw sheet? This also shines a massive spotlight on the huge untapped potential of the Asian market, specifically Southeast Asia. The WTA has spent years courting China with very mixed results. The Philippines, however, represents a market driven by pure, unadulterated passion, and Alex Eala is the catalyst igniting that explosion of interest. If she continues on this upward trajectory, we could easily see more tour-level events popping up in Southeast Asia, or at the very minimum, a recognition that she is a primary marketing asset on a global scale. For tennis fans, watching from Europe or the Americas, this might look like a novelty act or a one-off occurrence, but it is actually revealing a seismic shift in tennis demographics. The sport has been thoroughly dominated by European and American stars for decades, creating a very specific center of gravity. Consequently, the infrastructure, the heavy media coverage, and the massive sponsorship dollars have all flowed exclusively toward those Western markets. Meanwhile, populations like the Philippines have harbored massive dormant tennis fan bases that were largely ignored simply because they did not have a champion to rally behind until now. Now they finally do have that hero, and they are demonstrating unequivocally that they can generate atmospheres and ticket sales that rival anything you will find in the stadiums of Europe or North America. That reality should terrify established stars who have gotten comfortable assuming they are irreplaceable, because Eala just proved that emotional connection matters more than a trophy cabinet when it comes to drawing crowds and generating revenue. Make no mistake, the pressure resting on Eala's shoulders going forward in this tournament is absolutely immense. The tournament organizers are currently scrambling to adjust the schedule because they realize they cannot relegate her to side courts or bury her in the early morning sessions anymore. She has become the primetime event regardless of who is standing on the other side of the net or what their ranking is. That is the true definition of star power when you dictate the schedule instead of the schedule dictating you. But there is also a distinct danger lurking here for the young star. The sheer emotional expenditure of a match like this is draining. We often see young players win massive emotional matches in front of home-like crowds, only to come out completely flat and exhausted in the very next round. The adrenaline hangover is a very real physiological phenomenon. Eala's team has to get her to sleep, help her physically recover, and force her to refocus entirely on the next opponent. You have to remember that the tournament is not won in the first round, no matter how loud the crowd screamed or how euphoric the victory felt in the moment. The contrasting images of empty seats at other top-tier matches compared to the standing room-only capacity of the Eala session will define the visual narrative of this tournament for years to come. Regardless of who actually lifts the trophy at the end of the week, the enduring story of the Qatar Open 2026 will undeniably be about the rise of Alex Eala. Alex Eala did not merely participate in the draw. She single-handedly resuscitated the entire week, injecting a fresh pulse of life, deafening crowd noise, and vibrant energy into an event that was perilously close to fading into the background as just another forgettable stop on the early season calendar. For titans like Aryna Sabalenka and the rest of the top-seeded elite, this unfolding reality must be jarring to witness because, while they undeniably hold the upper hand in technical mastery and court dominance right now, the tectonic plates of the tennis landscape are shifting beneath their feet. These champions might boast cabinet-filling trophies and superior win-loss records, yet they find themselves unable to manufacture the sheer voltage and electric hysteria that Eala generates with a simple wave, creating a disparity that inflicts a psychological bruise on the ego, which is surprisingly arduous to shake off. We are watching a scenario that forces the establishment to face an uncomfortable axiom: holding the title of statistically superior player on the planet does not automatically grant you the title of most relevant or commercially vital athlete in the eyes of the ticket-buying public. The thunderous presence of the Filipino faithful dominating the stands serves as a masterclass in engagement, a critical lesson that tennis governing bodies and tour executives must urgently internalize and leverage if they intend to expand the sport's global footprint. There is no escaping the reality that a rabid, fully immersed fan base constitutes the beating heart of professional sports. Without that raw, kinetic energy pulsing through the stadium, even the most prestigious events risk falling completely flat and losing their luster. Organizers can showcase the most gifted technicians to ever hold a racket, but if the grandstands remain silent, and nobody cares deeply enough to actually show up and create that buzzing spectacle, the sport is destined to stagnate and hemorrhage potential revenue. Eala wields a distinct superpower in the form of a colossal built-in following that trails her loyally to every corner of the globe. Wherever a Filipino community exists, which is effectively every major city on Earth, she finds a waiting army. This represents a staggering competitive edge. a unique asset that simply cannot be manufactured through grueling hours of drills on the practice court or by refining the mechanics of a backhand. We are witnessing a phenomenon rooted purely in cultural pride and demographics, effectively gifting her a home court advantage, whether she is playing in the Middle East, Europe, or the Americas, turning virtually every away game into a homestand. It serves as a wake-up call for dominant forces like Sabalenka, who have ruled through sheer athletic excellence, making them realize that true superstardom in the year 2026 demands something far more elusive than just securing match points. The stark evidence is right there on the score sheet. Alex Eala packed an entire stadium to the rafters for a routine opening round clash while decorated. Grand Slam champions were left battling their hearts out in front of eerily vacant 8 rows. Qatar Open officials made a calculated gamble to market her as the marquee headline act over the actual world number ones. And that roll of the dice paid out immense dividends with an atmosphere unlike anything we have seen, and ticket revenue shooting through the roof. The verdict is in star power has decoupled from the ranking system. It is now entirely driven by human connection and narrative, and Eala possesses that magnetic X factor in spades. Stay locked in right here for more unfiltered hard truths and updates from the tennis world.